There are 7 movies in May that I have seen but have not reviewed yet, and already I have 7 movies in June that I haven't reviewed yet. So I guess let's start going backwards from the movies that I saw in June. Let's start off with the newest one, shall we? Or at least the one that I've most recently seen from June. Because I haven't seen Transformers yet. That's probably going to be Saturday. And still have yet to see All Eyes on Me and Rough Night. Saw the other 2 that week though. Cars 3 is the newest and the first Pixar film we're getting this year. We're getting 2 this year, just like the year that Inside Out and The Good Dinosaur came. And I wonder if it's going to be like that year, where one of the Pixar movies is going to be highly praised by both critics and audience, while the other one gets sort of average reviews. I mean, it's not highly praised, but it's not bad, while other people feel that it's one of the worst Pixar movies of all time. Honestly, I don't see that big of a difference between Inside Out and The Good Dinosaur. They're very different, but I liked them fairly equally. So I wonder what it's going to be like with Cars 3 and Coco coming out this year. And I was thinking Cars 3 is probably going to be the bad one, or at least the one that most people dislike. And I have to say, I really enjoyed this one. And that is kind of difficult for me to say because I'm not a fan of the Cars movies. I do like the first one, don't get me wrong, I like it. It would be good enough to get maybe 3 stars if I ever rewatched it and reviewed it with the new scoring system. I mean, it could get a little higher than 3, but it's most likely going to stick in the 3 to 3.5 range. But when you have 18 films from Pixar, most of which would get the 4-star or higher range in my scoring spectrum, then a 3-star movie is going to be towards the bottom of the list if I count down worst to best, or vice versa. And so yeah, I like Cars, but it's the least favorite, or among the least favorite. And I don't really want to talk about Cars 2 because honestly, out of the 18 movies I've seen from Pixar, Cars 2 is the only one I legitimately dislike. I don't outright hate it, but I definitely don't like it. And so with Cars 3 I wasn't really expecting much. I thought, okay, the animation looks better, but at the same time there was a bunch of people that saw that teaser and saw that trailer and thought, wow, he's getting in this terrible wreck, it's slow motion, it looks like it's almost like a horrific accident or played off like a horror movie. And so a lot of people honestly saw that teaser trailer and thought, wow, this is going to be a realistic, gritty Cars film. And I was thinking to myself, this is just a teaser trailer. Most likely this will just be one scene where it's dark, realistic, and gritty, and horrific. And sure enough, that's what it's like. But I gotta hand it to them, this is better than both Cars and Cars 2. But I'm getting ahead of myself. What is Cars 3 about? Well, it's actually 2 stories rolled up in one. Heck, maybe even more than 2 stories if you really think about it. But let's start off with the main plot, the thing that most people expect this movie to be about. Let's talk about that a little bit first. It starts off with Lightning McQueen racing and having a good time and just racing and doing what he loves. He's our main character, or at least one of our main characters, and of course he's still voiced by Owen Wilson. But as he's racing one day, a new blood comes around, a new, faster, much slicker model, and just wipes the floor with McQueen and all the other racers. This new car is Jackson Storm, voiced by Armie Hammer, who at first almost sounded like Channing Tatum. At least to me, that's who it sounded like at first, but beforehand I had looked into it and found out it was Armie Hammer. Well, as this newer car starts becoming the face of racing and really showing that he can beat any old car, all the older model cars are starting to get kicked out, replaced, or retire, and a bunch of new blood starts coming in, and it's at a point where Lightning McQueen seems to be the only racer of the older generation. Or at least the Cars and Cars 2 generation. But pushing himself to his limits, he eventually crashes, and that's what we get out of that first teaser trailer. At first, he's washed up, feeling sorry for himself, but eventually he gets determination again to race again and try to train himself to be better, faster, and train with the newer style of training that all these new models are training.
The racing world is changing.
Treadmills, wind tunnels, virtual reality. Still working on that. And interactive race simulation. Whoa, 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 whoa!
Danger, you have jumped a barrier.
Oh!
You are on fire. You are going the wrong way.
Turn off!
You have crashed.
But while that's going on, we have a few other stories going on parallel to the main story. One of which is the story about our secondary main character of the film, Cruz Ramirez, who starts off as McQueen's trainer and sticks as his trainer, and you delve a little bit deeper into her storyline and how she became a trainer and how she really wanted to be a racer. At that same time, Lightning McQueen is dealing with some internal struggles and also going down the path and learning a little bit more about the person who initially trained him in the first Cars movie, or trained him after he got off the road and got lost, and the whole story with Doc Hudson. And you see parallels between Doc Hudson's accident and McQueen's accident in this film. Again, I wasn't really expecting much going into Cars 3. I thought, well, it's definitely got to be better than Cars 2, and if it's anywhere near the first Cars, then it's going to be at least good. And it's better than the first Cars, at least in my opinion. But then again, I haven't seen Cars since like 2007 or 8, so a few years ago. I know it came out like 2006, but I didn't see it the year it came out. I saw it when it was on Disney Channel, I think. We were flipping through channels. I was with family, and we just came across Cars and watched it. So it's definitely been a while. But I do feel that this story is crafted better and has a little bit more meaning to the end, or at least some more insight that adults can grasp on rather than just kids. I know there is messages and stuff in Cars that both adults and kids could like, but I mean, it's very different from Cars 2. But I have to say, Cars 3 does feel like it's a little bit more on the adult side when it comes to the themes and the messages and the real meat of the story. The real drama. And I can't believe I'm saying that about a Cars movie, but it feels very typical and on the better side of Pixar. I think all the voice acting is good and perfect for the roles that they're in, all the old cast as well as the new cast. In fact, I do like a lot of the new characters introduced in this movie. I think the racing and the training is handled nicely. I like that some of the more annoying characters that we got a little bit too much of in Cars 2 is at a nice minimal level in this movie. And there are at least a few moments where it does get dramatic, and while the dramatic moments could be a little forced to some and a little too melodramatic for some, I definitely didn't mind it, and I thought, hey, it looked like they were making more of an effort in this film than they were the other two. I do really love the parallels of McQueen's journey with Doc Hudson's journey, or at least his wreck, and then eventually being in, Radiator Springs, or what was the town's name again? I forgot. I think it was Radiator Springs. How he got there, and then how he met McQueen, and how he became McQueen's trainer, or coach, or lead pit crew, whatever you call it. See, I'm not good with terms of racing. I don't watch racing. I don't know what the terms of they are in Cars. But anyway, I like that, and I like that it's a little bit more than just him training to be the best and him going to race at the end of the movie. I also like McQueen and Cruz's chemistry in this movie, or at least the voice actors as well as the whole characters themselves in the movie. And I do feel that even though there is a little bit more child humor kind of that you expect from Cars, is done in a minimum and done in a way that I still enjoyed it, and I thought, you know what, this definitely isn't annoying. I will warn you though, it does feel like this is a little too much for the much younger audience. Like, kids under 7 will probably be a little bit more bored with this movie. There might not be enough color and enough crazy, goofy, childish humor to really keep them invested. And the story is a little bit more complex than an underdog trying to be the best and defeat the person who defeated him at the beginning of the movie. It is more than that. It hooks you in with that sort of underdog storyline, but it becomes a completely different movie, or at least a completely different ending for such a climax. But that climax that actually happens, the story that builds up to that climax is sprinkled in really nicely through the movie, so you realize there is more than one story happening through the middle. And so when that change actually happens in the climax, that's my favorite part of this entire movie. This is one of those movies that feels like it gets better and better as it goes. But at the same time, movies like that are much harder for me to review and to come up with a rating, because it's really hard when the beginning of the movie is like a 3 or maybe even a 2, but then as it goes along it keeps getting better and better and better to the point at the very end it is easily a 4 or a 4.5 star movie. Like, it's really hard to balance that, because it's like, okay, the first part of it was okay, the middle was getting better, but then I really liked the ending. I mean, if you're expecting a climax that's very simple and predictable and straight to the point and something that kids are like, oh, it's about an underdog defeating the enemy, then you're gonna probably be sadly mistaken. But honestly, I was pleasantly surprised. But what can I say that's actually bad? Because on one hand, there isn't a lot of things that I can say that is bad about this film. I can think of things that other people might not like, but when it comes to me, there isn't a lot that I dislike about the film. But at that same time, it's not one of those films where I highly adore and highly love. It's one of those ones that I just simply really like. I guess I can say that the beginning of the movie felt a little, well, not slow. It was still them racing and having a good time, but at that same time, it didn't really, it was just okay. It was a good, average film that I liked. You know, it started off like that, but got better as the movie got along. And while I've had problems with the first 2 Cars movies where I'm thinking, okay, how did these cars live in this world? How are they made? What's the whole... Like, that kind of thing always bothered me in the other 2 films. And I know it's like, oh, it's a cartoon, it's just animated cars. You're not supposed to think about the world building. But I'm thinking, but other movies do that. Other animated movies do that. Why can't this one, you know? And for the story it was telling, it didn't really matter about the world building and all that. There's a few moments where I scratched my head and like, okay, how does Mater work that iPod looking thing, you know? I mean, there's a few things like that here and there, but not as much as the other 2 Cars movies, because I got invested with the story and I actually cared about the characters. At that same point, it does feel like some of the racing buddies in this movie at the beginning, they felt like they're characters that we should know as an audience, but I don't remember the first 2 Cars that much. I wasn't too invested in those movies enough that I just like, okay, are we supposed to know these people? Are these recurring characters? I don't even know. And I do feel that flashbacks were overused at a point. I mean, it was helpful because I didn't remember the first 2 Cars movies that much, but at that same time, it felt like it overused it to the point where it was using it as a crutch. I understand the use of flashbacks in this movie because it's dealing with a character that is no longer with us in this movie. Yeah, this car apparently died. I don't even remember that happening in the other movies. And so some of those flashbacks could be from the first 2 films, while others could be completely new for this movie. I don't remember because I don't remember the first 2 Cars movies all that well. So I understand the use for them. It just felt like it used it too much to build the internal conflict and the parallels between him and Doc Hudson that it felt like it was using it as a crutch, and it was the only way it could draw those parallels. Honestly, that's the most I can think of about what I dislike about this movie. Like I said, there's a few other things that people might not like. I feel like people are going to be so invested in the underdog story that they're going to miss the seeds planted for the actual stories happening throughout the movie, that when it comes to the ending, they think that a main character is actually giving in to panic attacks and giving in, and some other new character is winning the day. I feel that some people might think that, and people actually do, and because I've seen a few or read a few reviews on the audience side of Rotten Tomatoes. That kind of happens when a movie actually has a real movie beneath it, while on the surface level people are thinking the generic and usual stuff that goes along in a movie. This movie has heart and it has meaning by the end of the film, and I honestly enjoyed it. I'm going to give Cars 3 4 stars. Now, even though Cars 3 has 4 stars for me, I'm curious where it'll rank in all 18 Pixar movies for me, because it's the only one to have the new scoring system that I have. All the other ones have the older scoring system, so I'd practically have to rewatch all of them with the new scoring system in mind in order to get a true understanding of where the movies place in my favorite Pixar films. But most likely Cars 3 will be somewhere in the middle, maybe even the high middles. Or who knows, despite it having 4 stars, it might be towards the bottom, because there's a lot of really great Pixar films. So, have you seen Cars 3? What'd you think about it? Go ahead and comment below. And if you like this video and you want to see more, please check out my movie reviews of 2015, 2016, or 2017. As always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My Opinion.